I knocked on my parents' door for our weekly dinner, but my mom shouted, "What are you doing here? Your payment hasn't come through yet." I explained I'm running short this month. My dad scoffed, "No money, no family time. That's the deal." My sister added, "My car payment is due tomorrow, send that or don't bother coming back." My mom sneered, "We're not a charity case for broke children." I stayed quiet and left. That week, I cut off all their payments and blocked their numbers. Now they're calling from different phones, sobbing and begging me to please turn the money back on. I never thought I'd be writing this story, but here we are. My name is Elena, and I'm 32 years old. For the past 3 years, I've been financially supporting my entire family while they treated me like their personal ATM. This is the story of how I finally stood up for myself and watched their carefully constructed world of entitlement crumble. Let me start from the beginning. I'm a software engineer at a tech company in Seattle, and I've been incredibly fortunate with my career. After years of working 60-hour weeks, taking on extra projects, and constantly upgrading my skills, I landed a senior position that pays well into the 6 figures. I worked my ass off to get where I am, often sacrificing my social life and personal relationships to climb the corporate ladder. My family, however, seemed to think my success was somehow their birthright. It started innocently enough 3 years ago when my dad, Thomas, lost his job at the manufacturing plant where he'd worked for 15 years. The company downsized, and at 58, he was having trouble finding new employment. My mom, Diane, worked part-time at a local boutique, but her income barely covered groceries. My younger sister Camilla, who was 25 at the time, had just graduated from college with a degree in communications and was struggling to find steady work. Being the oldest and most financially stable, I felt obligated to help. I started by covering their mortgage payments for a few months, just until Dad could find something new. Then I helped with Camilla's student loan payments because she was stressed about her credit score. When Mom's car broke down, I bought her a reliable used Honda. It felt good to be able to help my family during a tough time. But somewhere along the way, temporary assistance became permanent expectation. Dad stopped actively job hunting after about 6 months, claiming he was too old for most positions. Mom reduced her hours at the boutique, saying she deserved to take it easy after raising 2 kids. Camilla found a part-time job at a marketing agency but spent most of her paycheck on clothes, makeup, and nights out with friends. Before I knew it, I was paying their mortgage, car insurance, utilities, groceries, and even giving them spending money. Camilla had convinced me to lease her a brand new Jeep Cherokee because her old car was embarrassing. Mom suddenly needed a credit card for emergencies that I was responsible for paying off. Dad decided he wanted to try his hand at day trading and asked me to fund his investment account. The breaking point came 2 months ago when I realized I was sending them over $4,000 every month. That's nearly half my take-home pay. I had been putting off buying my own home, hadn't taken a vacation in 2 years, and was eating ramen noodles for dinner while they were ordering takeout 5 nights a week. I decided to have a conversation with them about gradually reducing their dependence on me. I suggested Dad look into vocational training programs, that Mom could increase her hours at work, and that Camilla could move back home to save money while she built her career. The conversation didn't go well. "You're being selfish, Elena," Mom had said. "Family takes care of family. We raised you, clothed you, put you through college. Now it's your turn to give back." "I never asked to be born," Camilla chimed in. "You chose to be successful. Why should I suffer just because you want to keep more of your money?" Dad was the worst. "I worked for 30 years to provide for this family. I deserve to retire early. Your mother and I sacrificed everything for you girls, and now you want to abandon us." The guilt tripping was intense, but I stood my ground. I told them I would continue helping for 3 more months while they figured out their situations, but after that, I needed to focus on my own future. They seemed to agree, but I could tell they weren't taking me seriously. Those 3 months came and went with no changes. If anything, they became more demanding. Camilla started hinting about wanting to move to a better apartment. Mom wanted to renovate the kitchen. Dad bought a new fishing boat without consulting anyone, then casually mentioned that the monthly payments would be just another small expense for me to cover. I should have put my foot down then, but I kept telling myself that family was important, that I was lucky to be able to help, that things would eventually change. I convinced myself that their behavior was just temporary stress and that deep down, they appreciated what I was doing for them. The truth is, I was enabling them, and they had grown comfortable with their new lifestyle. Why would they change when someone else was paying for everything? I had become their golden goose, and they were going to squeeze every penny out of me they could. The final straw came 3 weeks ago. I had been dealing with some unexpected expenses at work. My laptop died, and I had to buy a new one. My car needed major repairs. I also had a root canal that cost me $1,200 even with insurance. It was just one of those months where everything hits at once. I calculated my budget and realized I was going to be about $800 short of their usual payment. I called Mom to explain the situation and asked if we could reduce their payment just for that month. The response was immediate and cruel. "Elena, we have bills to pay. Your father's boat payment is due, Camilla's car payment is due, and I already made plans to go shopping with my friends. You can't just change the amount whenever you feel like it." I tried to explain that it wasn't about what I felt like but about what I could actually afford, but she cut me off. "You make plenty of money. Stop being dramatic. If you can't manage your finances better, maybe you need to find a side job." A side job. She suggested I get a side job so I could continue funding their lifestyle. I was already working 50 hours a week at my primary job, and she wanted me to work more so they could continue living for free. That conversation replayed in my head for days. I started really looking at my bank statements and adding up exactly how much I had given them over the past 3 years. The number was staggering, $144,000. I had given my family more than most people make in 2 years, and they were treating me like I was stingy for asking to reduce one payment by $800. I made a decision that week. I was going to test something. I wanted to see how they would react if I came to dinner empty-handed, just to spend time with them. Would they be happy to see me? Would they ask how I was doing? Would they show any interest in my life beyond my bank account? Saturday arrived, and I drove to their house with a knot in my stomach. I had always transferred their money on Friday nights, but this time I didn't. I wanted to see if they would notice, if they would say anything, if they cared about me beyond what I could provide for them. I knocked on the door, and Mom opened it with a confused look on her face. Instead of her usual greeting, the first words out of her mouth were exactly what I wrote in the title of this post: "What are you doing here? Your payment hasn't come through yet." Not "Hi, Elena." Not "How was your week?" Not "Come in, dinner's almost ready." Just a demand to know why I was there without having paid them first. I tried to explain that I was running short this month and thought we could just have dinner together as a family, like we used to before money became involved. I hoped that maybe, just maybe, they would understand and we could have a normal evening together. But Dad's response crushed any remaining hope I had. He scoffed at me and said, "No money, no family time. That's the deal." The deal. He called our family relationship a deal. In that moment, I realized that I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was their business partner, their investor, their financial backer. The only value I had to them was monetary. Camilla, who had been listening from the living room, walked over and added her own twist of the knife. "My car payment is due tomorrow. Send that or don't bother coming back. Don't bother coming back." My own sister told me not to come back unless I paid her car payment. This was a car I had been paying for 2 years, a car she had specifically requested, a car that cost me $400 every month. But it was Mom's final comment that sealed the deal. She looked at me with genuine disgust and said, "We're not a charity case for broke children." Broke children. She called me, the person who had been supporting their entire household for 3 years, a broke child. The irony was almost laughable. I was the only one in the family with a stable income, the only one who had been working consistently, the only one who had been financially responsible, and she was calling me broke. I stood there for a moment, looking at these 3 people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, who were supposed to be my family, and I realized that I didn't recognize them anymore. Or maybe I was finally seeing them clearly for the first time. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't try to explain my financial situation again. I simply said, "I understand," turned around, and left. The drive home was surreal. I felt like I was in a movie, like this couldn't possibly be my real life. I kept thinking about all the times I had skipped meals to make sure I could send them money. All the times I had worked overtime to cover their expenses. All the times I had told myself that family was worth any sacrifice. But they had made it clear that I wasn't family anymore. I was just a source of income, and when that source was threatened, they were willing to cut me off entirely. That night, I sat in my small apartment and made a list of everything I had been paying for them. The mortgage, $1,800 per month. Camilla's car payment, $400 per month. Mom's credit card, $300 to $500 per month. Dad's boat payment, $250 per month. Utilities, $200 per month. Groceries, $400 per month. Various other expenses, $200 to $600 per month. The total was staggering. I also made a list of the things I had been putting off for myself. A down payment on a house. A reliable car to replace my 2015 Honda that was constantly breaking down. A vacation. New clothes. Decent furniture. Emergency savings. Retirement contributions. The list went on and on. For 3 years, I had been living like a college student while funding their comfortable lifestyle. I had been telling myself it was temporary, that it was worth it, that family came first. But they had shown me that I wasn't family to them. I was just a paycheck. The next morning, I called my bank and canceled all the automatic transfers to their accounts. I called the credit card company and removed myself as the authorized payer on Mom's card. I called the car dealership and explained that I would no longer be making payments on Camilla's lease. I called the mortgage company and removed myself from their account. It took about 3 hours to untangle myself from their financial web, and with each phone call, I felt lighter. For the first time in 3 years, I was going to keep my own money. I was going to be able to save for my future, to live in a place that wasn't falling apart, to buy food that wasn't ramen noodles. I also blocked their phone numbers. I knew they would call once they realized the money had stopped flowing, and I wasn't ready to deal with their manipulation tactics. I needed time to process what had happened and to figure out how I wanted to move forward. The first few days were quiet. I went to work, came home, and enjoyed the strange feeling of not having to worry about anyone else's bills. I ordered takeout without calculating whether I could afford it. I browsed apartment listings online and actually considered the nice places instead of just the cheapest options. During this time, I started keeping a journal. My therapist had recommended it years ago, but I never had the emotional energy to maintain it while I was constantly stressed about everyone else's problems. Now, with my mind finally clear, I found myself writing pages every night. I wrote about the subtle ways the financial arrangement had poisoned our relationships over the years. How family gatherings became awkward when Dad would joke about needing a new lawnmower or Mom would casually mention how expensive her medications were getting. How Camilla would send me screenshots of cute clothes online with heart eye emojis, knowing I'd cave and buy them for her. I wrote about how I had started dreading family events because they always ended with someone asking for money. How I had stopped sharing good news about work promotions or bonuses because it would immediately be followed by requests for increased payments. How I had begun to feel like a fraud among my colleagues, pretending to be financially stable while I was secretly struggling to make ends meet. The journaling helped me realize just how much of my identity had become wrapped up in being the family provider. I had started introducing myself at networking events as the one who takes care of everyone, wearing my financial martyrdom like a badge of honor. I had convinced myself that this made me a good person, a loving daughter, a responsible sister. But looking back, I could see how unhealthy it had become. I hadn't been on a date in over a year because I was too embarrassed to admit I lived in a studio apartment with furniture from college. I had turned down invitations to friends' weddings because I couldn't afford the travel expenses. I had stopped investing in my own professional development because every spare dollar went to my family. On Wednesday, I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I went shopping for myself. Not necessity shopping for work clothes or groceries, but actual fun shopping. I bought a pair of jeans that fit properly, a sweater that made me feel confident, and a bottle of wine that cost more than $15. That evening, I sat in my tiny apartment, wearing my new clothes and sipping my good wine, and I felt something I had almost forgotten: contentment. Not the frantic happiness that comes from making other people happy, but genuine personal satisfaction. I also started calculating what my life could look like if I kept my own money. I could have a down payment for a house within 8 months. I could lease a reliable car within a month. I could start contributing to my retirement account again, something I had stopped doing 2 years ago when Camilla decided she needed a more expensive apartment. But the most shocking realization came when I looked at my credit report. My credit score had actually dropped over the past 3 years, not because I had missed payments, but because I was constantly maxing out my credit cards to cover their expenses before my paycheck came in. I had been damaging my own financial health to protect theirs. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, working in the tech industry, making excellent money, and I had worse credit than my unemployed father. I had been so focused on keeping them afloat that I had been slowly sinking myself. I spent Thursday evening researching financial recovery strategies. I made a budget for the first time in years, one that included only my expenses. I set up automatic transfers to savings accounts. I researched investment options. I felt like I was learning to take care of myself all over again. But the peace didn't last long. By Thursday, they had figured out that the money wasn't coming. Camilla was the first to reach out, texting me from a number I didn't recognize. The message was brief and telling: "Can't make my lease payment. Need $400 to avoid penalty. Emergency." No apology. No acknowledgement of how they had treated me. Just a demand for money to fix the immediate crisis. I didn't respond. The messages kept coming from different numbers. Dad texted, "Boat payment bounced. Need payment ASAP." Mom texted, "Credit card declined at store. Embarrassing. Fix this." Still no apologies. Still no recognition that they had done anything wrong. They were treating this like a technical glitch, like I had accidentally forgotten to pay them and just needed to be reminded. When I didn't respond to the texts, the phone calls started. They were calling from numbers I didn't recognize, friends' phones, work phones, even what appeared to be payphone numbers. I let them all go to voicemail. The first few voicemails were angry. Dad's voice, Elena, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you need to call me back immediately. The mortgage payment is due, and if it's late, we'll get a penalty fee. Mom's voice, this is ridiculous, Elena. You can't just cut off your family because you're having a bad week. We depend on you. Call me back. Camilla's voice, my car is literally gone, Elena. I can't get to work without it. I could lose my job. How are you okay with destroying my life like this? As the days went on, and their bills continued to go unpaid, the tone of the voicemails changed. The anger turned to panic, then to desperation, then to something I had never heard from them before, genuine remorse. During this time, I was also hearing from other people. My Aunt Karen, Mom's sister, called me from her own phone. She had always been the family mediator, the one who tried to keep everyone together during conflicts. Elena, honey, your mother called me crying. She said you've cut them off completely. What's going on? I found myself explaining the whole situation to Karen, something I had never done before. I had been too ashamed to admit to anyone how much money I was giving them, too embarrassed to reveal how they treated me. But talking to Karen, I realized I needed an outside perspective. Oh, sweetheart, Karen said after I finished. I had no idea it was that bad. I mean, I knew Diane was struggling financially, but I thought you were just helping with a few bills here and there. It's been everything, Karen. Their entire lifestyle has been funded by me for 3 years. And they turned you away when you couldn't pay 1 month? They wouldn't even let me in the house. Karen was quiet for a long moment. You know, I've been wondering why they seem so comfortable lately. Diane was bragging about Camilla's new car, and Thomas was talking about his boat. I thought maybe he had found a good job or they had come into some money. I never imagined that I was paying for all of it. I'm so sorry, Elena. I wish I had known. I would have said something. That conversation with Karen was eye-opening. It made me realize that my parents had been lying to extended family about their situation, taking credit for a lifestyle they couldn't afford and letting me remain invisible in the narrative. I also heard from my cousin Jake, Karen's son, who had been at a recent family barbecue I had skipped. Dude, your dad was being so weird about money stuff, Jake told me. He kept bragging about how well the family was doing financially, but then he asked me if I could spot him $20 for gas. It was super awkward. These conversations helped me understand that their financial desperation wasn't new, it had been building for a while. I had just been enabling them to hide it from everyone, including themselves. During the second week of no contact, I also started receiving messages from their friends. Apparently, they had started asking people in their social circle for money, and some of those people were reaching out to me for context. Mrs. Henderson, Mom's friend from the boutique, called me. Elena, your mother asked me for a loan yesterday. She said it was just temporary, but she seemed really desperate. I don't have that kind of money to lend, but I'm worried about her. Is everything okay? I explained that I had been supporting them financially but had recently stopped, and that they needed to figure out their own situation. Mrs. Henderson was shocked. I had no idea you were supporting them. Diane always made it sound like they were doing fine. She talks about you being successful, but she never mentioned. Well, These conversations revealed another layer of their deception. They had been using my money to maintain their social status while portraying themselves as financially independent to their friends. They were living a lie, and I had been funding it. The most disturbing call came from Camilla's friend Jessica, who I had met a few times at family events. Elena, Camilla is staying with me right now, and I'm getting really uncomfortable. She keeps talking about how you've abandoned the family and how you're being selfish. But she also keeps asking to borrow money from me and my roommates. She had to return her leased car last week because she couldn't make the payments, and now she's asking everyone for rides. Yesterday she took my debit card without asking and bought groceries. I don't know what to do. I felt terrible that Camilla was imposing on her friends, but I also felt validated. Her behavior with Jessica was exactly what she had been doing with me, taking without asking, manipulating through guilt, and refusing to take responsibility for her own situation. Jessica, I'm sorry she's putting you in this position. My advice is to set clear boundaries and stick to them. Don't let her guilt you into supporting her. Is that what you did? Eventually, yes. But it took me 3 years to get there. By the end of the first week, Mom was crying on the voicemails. Elena, please call me back. I know we said some things we didn't mean, but you have to understand how stressed we've been. We love you, sweetheart. We just need you to turn the money back on. Turn the money back on. Like I was a utility company they could negotiate with. Dad's voicemails became increasingly frantic. The bank called about the mortgage. We're going to lose the house, Elena. You can't let that happen. We're family. Family doesn't abandon family. Camilla's messages were the most manipulative. I can't make my car payment and they're threatening to repossess it. Is this what you wanted? To ruin my credit? I'm your little sister, Elena. I need you. But the most telling voicemail came from Mom during the second week. Her voice was small and broken, completely different from the confident, demanding tone she had used when she told me I was a broke child. Elena, I've been thinking about what we said to you, and I know we were wrong. We were just so used to the way things were. We forgot that you're our daughter, not just someone who helps us. Please come home. We'll figure something else out. We just want our family back. For a moment, listening to that voicemail, I almost cracked. The little girl in me who had always wanted her parents' approval, who had always wanted to be good enough, who had always wanted to be loved, almost picked up the phone. But then I remembered that phrase, "We're not a charity case for broke children." I remembered the look of disgust on Mom's face when she said it. I remembered Dad saying our relationship was a deal. I remembered Camilla telling me not to come back. They weren't sorry about how they had treated me. They were sorry about the consequences of how they had treated me. There's a big difference. I didn't call back. The third week brought a new development. Mom showed up at my office building. The building had a reception desk, but it wasn't exactly high security. Anyone could walk in and ask to see someone. There she was, sitting in the lobby when I came back from lunch, looking smaller and older than I remembered. "Elena, please," she said, standing up when she saw me. "Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking for." I could have kept walking. I could have asked building security to escort her out. But something in her posture, in the way she was wringing her hands, made me stop. 5 minutes, I said. We sat in a corner of the lobby, and she started talking immediately, like she was afraid I would leave if she paused. "I know we messed up. I know we took you for granted. But Elena, we're going to lose everything. The house, the cars, everything. Your father is talking about bankruptcy. Camilla is sleeping on couches. I had to sell my jewelry to buy groceries." She was crying now, and I felt that familiar tug of guilt and responsibility. But I also noticed something in her words. She was talking about what they were losing, what they were going through, what they needed. She wasn't talking about me, about how I felt, about how they had treated me. "I need you to understand something, Mom," I said quietly. 3 weeks ago, I came to dinner just wanting to spend time with my family. I wasn't asking for money. I wasn't asking for anything except to be loved and accepted even when I couldn't pay your bills. And you turned me away. I know, she said quickly. We were stressed, we weren't thinking clearly. You called me a broke child. You said I wasn't worth your time if I couldn't pay you. You turned your daughter away from your door because she couldn't fund your lifestyle." Mom's face crumpled. "We didn't mean it like that." "How did you mean it, Mom?" How else could I have interpreted no money, no family time? How else could I have interpreted don't bother coming back? She didn't have an answer for that. "For 3 years, I continued, I gave you everything I had. I lived in a shitty apartment, drove a broken-down car, ate ramen noodles for dinner, and worked myself to exhaustion so that you could live comfortably. And the moment I needed a little understanding, a little compassion, you showed me exactly what I meant to you." "You mean everything to us?" she said desperately. "You're our daughter." "No, Mom. I'm your ATM. There's a difference." I paused, then decided to share something I had been thinking about all week. "Do you know what I did last weekend, Mom? I went to the grocery store and bought whatever I wanted without calculating the cost. Do you know how long it's been since I could do that? 2 years. 2 years since I could buy groceries without worrying about whether I'd have enough left for your bills." Mom looked confused, like she couldn't understand why that would be significant. "I bought good shampoo, Mom. Not the dollar store stuff I've been using. I bought actual name brand cereal instead of generic. I bought fresh fruit. And you know what I realized while I was shopping? I haven't bought myself anything nice in 3 years because every extra dollar went to you. We never asked you to sacrifice, you didn't have to ask. That's what family does, right? We sacrifice for each other. But it's supposed to go both ways, Mom. You're supposed to sacrifice for me too." I could see she was getting defensive, so I softened my tone slightly. "When was the last time you asked how I was doing? Not financially, but emotionally? When was the last time you invited me over just to spend time together, not because you needed something? When was the last time you offered to help me with anything?" Mom was quiet, and I could see her trying to remember. The fact that she had to think about it proved my point. "I've been drowning, Mom. For 3 years, I've been working myself to death, living like a broke college student, and putting off every personal goal I had, all to make sure you were comfortable. And not once did any of you ask if I was okay." She was quiet for a long moment, then said, "What do you want us to do?" How do we fix this? The question caught me off guard. I had been so focused on the hurt and anger that I hadn't really thought about what I wanted from them. But sitting there, looking at my mother's tear-streaked face, I realized what I needed. I want you to figure out how to take care of yourselves, I said. I want Dad to get a job, any job. I want you to work full-time. I want Camilla to move back home and pay rent. I want you to sell the boat, downsize the house, get rid of the expensive car. I want you to live within your means. But Elena, we can't afford. You can't afford to live the way you're living now, Mom. That's the point. You've been living beyond your means for 3 years, and I've been enabling it. That has to stop. And then you'll help us again? The question revealed everything. She wasn't asking how to rebuild our relationship. She wasn't asking how to earn my trust back. She was asking when the money would start flowing again. I don't know, Mom. I honestly don't know. She left after that, and I went back to my desk feeling emotionally drained. But I also felt something else, clarity. That conversation had confirmed what I already knew. They weren't interested in changing their behavior or taking responsibility for their actions. They were interested in getting their funding back. The fourth week brought the most dramatic development yet. I came home from work to find all 3 of them sitting on the steps outside my apartment building. They looked rough. Dad had clearly been drinking, Camilla's hair was unwashed and her clothes were wrinkled, and Mom looked like she hadn't slept in days. We're not leaving until you talk to us, Camilla said as I approached. You're trespassing, I replied. I can call the police. Go ahead, Dad slurred. Call them. Tell them how you abandoned your family. Tell them how you're letting us become homeless. I looked at these 3 people who had raised me, who I had loved unconditionally for 32 years, and I felt nothing but sadness. Not anger anymore, just deep, profound sadness for what we had lost. Get up, I said quietly. They looked at me with hope, thinking I was inviting them inside. Get up and go home. Figure out your lives. Stop waiting for me to save you. Elena, please, Camilla started, but I cut her off. I'm done. I'm done feeling guilty for your choices. I'm done feeling responsible for your problems. I'm done being treated like a bank account instead of a person. I'm done. I walked past them and into my building. They didn't follow. The next morning, I got a call from my landlord. Apparently, they had spent the night in the building's lobby, and other tenants had complained. I apologized and assured him it wouldn't happen again. It's been a week since then, and the calls have finally stopped. I don't know if they've given up or if they've found another source of income, but the desperate voicemails have ceased. Last week, I got an update from Aunt Karen. She had been in touch with Mom and gave me a rundown of their current situation. Dad had finally gotten a job at a local hardware store. It wasn't glamorous and it paid a fraction of what he used to make, but it was something. Mom had increased her hours at the boutique and taken on additional weekend shifts. Camilla had moved back in with them and was working full-time at her marketing job while looking for something that paid better. They're struggling, Karen told me. But they're figuring it out. Your dad seems different. More. I don't know, present? Like he's remembering what it feels like to work for his own survival. Karen also told me that they had sold Dad's boat and were considering downsizing their house. Diane's been looking at smaller places. She says they don't need all that space anyway. I felt a mixture of emotions hearing this update. Relief that they were taking steps to become self-sufficient. Sadness that it had taken such drastic measures to get them there. And a small, petty satisfaction that they were finally facing the reality of their financial situation. But I also felt something unexpected, pride. Not in them, but in myself. I had done something incredibly difficult. I had chosen my own well-being over their comfort, and it was working. They were surviving without me, maybe even thriving in their own way. I've been using this time to think about what I want my life to look like going forward. I've been apartment hunting and found a beautiful one-bedroom in a nice neighborhood. I've been car shopping and found a reliable used car that I can afford without sacrificing my future. I've been looking into retirement planning and realized that I can actually start saving for my own future now. I also started therapy about 2 weeks after cutting them off. I had been putting it off for years, telling myself I couldn't afford it while I was paying for everyone else's lives. My therapist, Dr. Noel Chang, has been helping me understand the psychological patterns that led me to enable my family's dependence. Financial abuse is real, she told me during our 4th session. It doesn't always look like someone stealing your money. Sometimes it looks like people manipulating you into giving them money through guilt, obligation, or threats of abandonment. That word, abuse, hit me hard. I had never thought of what my family was doing as abuse because it seemed consensual. I was choosing to give them money. But Dr. Noel Chang helped me see that choice made under emotional manipulation isn't really choice at all. We talked about my childhood and how I had always been the responsible one. How I had learned early that love was conditional on my ability to solve other people's problems. How I had internalized the belief that my value as a person was tied to what I could provide for others. You've been trained to believe that saying no to your family makes you selfish, Dr. Noel Chang explained. But healthy relationships require boundaries. What you did wasn't selfish, it was necessary. I also started dating again. I had been on 2 dates in the past month, both with guys I met through work connections. Nothing serious yet, but it felt good to remember that I was more than just a source of financial support. I was a person with interests, opinions, and dreams of my own. My colleague James asked me out for coffee last week. We spent 2 hours talking about everything except money, and I realized how much I had missed having conversations that weren't centered around bills and expenses. When he walked me to my car, he complimented my new sweater, and I felt a little thrill at being noticed for something other than my bank account. I've also been reconnecting with friends I had lost touch with over the past few years. My college roommate Lisa was in town for work, and we met for dinner. She was shocked when I told her what had been going on with my family. "I wondered why you always seemed so stressed about money," she said. "I mean, I knew you were doing well at work, but you always acted like you were broke." Because I basically was broke, even though I was making good money. That's insane, Elena. I can't believe they were taking advantage of you like that. Hearing validation from friends who weren't emotionally invested in my family dynamics helped me feel more confident in my decision. It was easy to second-guess myself when I was alone with my thoughts, but talking to neutral parties confirmed that I had done the right thing. But mostly, I've been thinking about family and what it means. I grew up believing that family was everything, that you sacrificed for family no matter what, that blood was thicker than water. But I've learned that family isn't just about sharing DNA. It's about love, respect, support, and mutual care. My parents and sister stopped being family to me the moment they made our relationship transactional. They turned love into a business arrangement, and when I couldn't hold up my end of the deal, they turned me away. Real family doesn't work that way. Real family loves you when you're broke. Real family supports you when you're struggling. Real family doesn't make you choose between your financial security and their acceptance. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe they'll change, maybe they won't. Maybe we'll rebuild our relationship, maybe we won't. But I know one thing for certain, I will never again allow anyone to treat me like a bank account instead of a person. I've learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to stop enabling someone's destructive behavior. Sometimes you have to let people face the consequences of their choices, even when it hurts. Sometimes you have to choose yourself, even when everyone else is calling you selfish. I chose myself, and for the first time in 3 years, I can sleep at night without worrying about someone else's bills. I can make decisions based on what's best for me, not what's best for people who don't have my best interests at heart. They can call me selfish. They can call me heartless. They can call me whatever they want. But they can't call me their ATM anymore. And honestly, that feels like freedom.